How we doing today, everybody? I had just recently finished my first campaign playthrough in patch 0.3 for Path of Exile 2. I know it seems like this is very late into the season for other people. I totally get that. Sadly, I had missed not only the starting weekend, but also the most recent weekend, because I just bought a house and I've been moving in, and oddly enough, making it so that we can cook food and turn on the heat has taken some of my priority away, but I still thought that it would be important for me to make this video because I think that in playing through the campaign, which is really either all that you like about Path of Exile 2 or literally just the tutorial of Path of Exile 2, either way, I figured I could share some of my insights as somebody who is relatively new to Path of Exile in its entirety. Even though I've been playing this on each release and I have multiple characters above level 90, I still consider myself to be very much a casual and somebody who is learning the game. And in patch 0.3, if you're somebody who already bought into the early access, maybe you bounced off of it, I think that they've made a lot of really great strides forward to make this a better experience. So I figured I'd make a really quick itemized list. I throw on some gameplay in the background just to keep our attention. And we talk about what I think that Grinding Gear Games is doing significantly better with this game in this patch, the things that I think that they could still do a lot better with, and not only that, just my general takeaways in getting through the campaign. I very much expect to continue to play this character. I'm just now getting into the end game. I'm going to start mapping. I'm going to go try to do pinnacle content. And I think that I have a lot of really good time before the next Diablo 4 season comes out to really sink my teeth into the end game of PoE, which I tried to do in the last season and still kind of bounced off of it just because mapping, the new tower rework, and in general, the content just wasn't there for me yet. But for context, I've been playing my own homebrew version of a Lich minion build. I am taking some inspiration from the smart people that I know both over at Maxroll as well as Gazzy, but this is basically my own character. I just picked the things that seemed like they were good. Yes, I ended up using cocaine ants just like everybody else, but I'm not necessarily following a build guide. I've played this general build 3 or 4 times now, so I have some idea of what I'm doing, but this is the end of it. It took me about 24 hours to beat the campaign. That's if you include the time that it took to learn all of the new supports that were in the game, double check everything, have to read through every single item, the experience that a casual playing the game would have. So 24 hours for 4 of the 6 total acts that will be in this game, as well as the few interludes that they added in. It's definitely going to be one of the pain points for a lot of people, I know, but I promise you, they're doing a lot of things better. So I made this quick list. Let's go ahead and take a look at it. But I figured the context of my character might help you to get a better understanding of what you could expect, depending on what build you're trying to play your way through on. I made 2 basic lists. The good things that I think have severely increased my enjoyment of playing through Path of Exile 2, and then the bad things that still feel a bit off, still don't necessarily make me the happiest player, or I feel like are places where they could improve on what the game is currently offering to players to bring in more people like me. And I want to touch on that statement just a little bit more. Bring in people like me. What do I mean by people like me? Well, one, I'm an ARPG player, right? I've been playing ARPGs since I was 9 years old, and before that it was tabletop RPGs. So I'm very much somebody who this genre is hoping to sink its teeth into. Now, obviously, the majority of my time has been with the Diablo series, from being a Diablo 2 speedrunner to being a Diablo 4 creator, as well as a partner with Blizzard. But on top of that, I've now played the gambit of all of the other ones, right? We've been playing Last Epoch. I'm going to be checking out Grim Dawn soon when all the new stuff comes out for that game. But I played everything. I played all the Torchlights. I played everything. I even played Diablo Immortal. I know, nobody likes that game. But what I'm trying to say is that I do have a selective taste. There are things that I like about ARPGs. And Path of Exile feels like one that should really be up my alley. It rewards people who are like me that want to start off with a spreadsheet in front of them before they even touch a single control on their keyboard. And I do believe that there are a lot of people in the ARPG space nowadays who were never here originally, who may be new to the genre and are trying to find their home game. And it really feels like Path of Exile 2 is meant to be the more accessible version of Path of Exile, where Path of Exile 1 is there for the hardcore blasters that just want to keep doing what they've been doing now for over a decade. So speaking to the things that I believe that they have really hit on the head here, the things that are making the game significantly better for somebody like me to play it, starts off with the new content and the new crafting that's been brought into the game. That is the Abyssal content and the Abyssal crafting. One of my major issues with Path of Exile was the severe lack of crafting, which I know sounds hilariously hypocritical coming from Diablo 4. Diablo 4, a game where I feel like crafting doesn't actually even describe what we do in it. This is not an either or, this is not a tribalism take, but in my experience playing Path of Exile 2, you are either rich enough to ignore the downsides of no crafting, or you were poor enough, like me, to just have to randomly slam things. And yes, there were ways to be able to modify this. There were different items that you could use to better your odds of coming out on top in a specific thing, and then you can lock an affix. And again, if you had infinite resources, you could eventually spin through until the item looked the way that you wanted it and it had the stats that you wanted. But for most people, you were just augmenting and transmuting, hitting it with a regal, and if you got lucky, exalted it a few times and then just prayed for the best. And in that regards, I didn't really feel like any of this was crafting. I felt like it was picking up loot, but with more steps. The Abyss crafting completely changes this paradigm for me and makes me feel like I am making decisions with my gear, and I'm able to onboard to deterministic crafting, if we want to call it that, much earlier on, even in the campaign itself. To just very quickly, for me, please. That's okay. That's okay. We like that. And then just one more time for the vine here, Boots. Make me proud. Holy shit, it hit Tri-Res. Well, I made good boots. And then going hand in hand with that, you have the content itself, which gives you these crafting materials. The Abyss content are great additions to the maps in the games right now. Random events where you just get to kill your way through a swath of enemies, and then you'll get a big chest at the end full of crafting materials. The specialty crafting materials that are a bit more deterministic, and or not only delving down into the Lightless Caverns where you get an entire mini dungeon where you get more of these crafting materials, but also just very challenging enemies with sometimes very scary and difficult to kill elite monsters that actually required me to respond to the things in my environment. I was just cruising through the campaign, never really having to do anything on a minion build. Everything just kind of died while everything exploded around me. But these monsters would kill me. So not only was the content interesting and engaging, it was challenging and fun. Once you learned its tricks, you were able to trivialize it a bit. But getting that random encounter of being able to go down and get even more loot, which actually rewarded you for killing your way through and clearing everything, as opposed to how I feel like it currently is in endgame mapping, where you kind of just want to get through your objectives as fast as possible because getting to the next map is always better than full clearing the previous map. This really hit the nail on the head for things that I would like to see in the game. And this reward of being a much more deterministic, although still RNG heavy form of crafting, made me feel like the items I was picking up and the currency that I was using to manipulate it mattered even early on. I didn't just need to hoard everything. I could just use it and gain the benefits of the gear that came out the other side. The biggest change, and the thing that's taken me the longest in decision making, has actually been to support gems. You can now use the same support gem across multiple skill gems. Not only that, they have added tiered structures to the support gems. This is really interesting because it allows them to give you weaker versions of these same support gems, but earlier on. So you're able to basically get your build online much sooner. And on top of that, you're able to look forward to getting higher level uncut support gems to be able to boost these effects even more. Great options like Rapid, going from like 10 to 25% increased attack speed, or Feeding Frenzy for minion builds, where at first they're taking a huge amount of additional damage, and then how much more damage they're taking is slowly cut in half. It feels good, even after you've gotten the correct support gem in the slot, to be able to then level up that support gem. With more unique instances not having this tiered structure, so they're a lot more straightforward, and when you unlock them, you are like vastly increasing the functionality of one of your skills and changing your skill rotation. I think that this in general has been a really good change. My only issue with it is that it has further increased the knowledge curve for what is and is not going to be good for you in the future. And I'll touch on that later on because I just want to talk about the good right now. If you have now played through multiple of the mainline patches for Path of Exile 2, then you are probably just as sick and tired of replaying through Acts 1 through 3, but now slightly harder, as I have been. So the changeover to adding in Act 4 in the interludes is a massive increase in quality of life just playing through this content. Now, this also highlights an issue that I have later on, but Act 4 by far blows the rest of the game out of the water. My only issue with it being that the sailing to different islands is a somehow even more arduous task than Act 2's bringing the Dreadnought to different areas. It's just adding on loading screens, and I think if they can optimize it so that I don't sail to the island, then have to get off the boat, then go through the loading screen to then wash up on the shore, and then listen to the NPC start off the little flavor text of it. It got very repetitive very quickly. But the actual aesthetic of it, the story of it, the structure of the act, and what you did in that act was light years above both Acts 2 and 3. I always feel like Act 1 has actually been in a really good spot. Perfect length, good story, sets everything up well, good boss at the end that really helps you to feel immersed in the game. The only issue being like the farmlands are like overly long for no reason. But Acts 2 and 3 have been a huge pain point for me, so playing through Act 4 and then these interludes has been a little bit of a kiss curse, where Act 4 is great, the interludes are interesting, I just kind of didn't want to return to Acts 2 and 3, but what can you do? They added in a ton of new bosses, a ton of new enemies, and this is always refreshing. It's always nice to be experiencing new mechanics and not just seeing repetitions of what you've already seen. That's just pretty natural human psychology. The new bosses are very cool. Their animations are very clean and very interesting mechanically. And not only that, all of this adds on to previous systems in the game like specters as well as companions. So it's really good that the work that they're doing here is continuing to augment things that are already in the game in case you enjoyed those things. So it's not just purely new stuff. You get to have that new stuff and revisit things that you're already doing. Obviously, if you've been playing a minion build like me, you've been hearing about cocaine ants everywhere. They are a lot of fun. Now that they've removed a lot of the additional power from a lot of the new specters, everything is a lot more in line with what you would typically experience. But it's just nice to have a powerful unit that doesn't absolutely melt your eyes like the Veilguard have been doing for the past season. I think that we're deep enough into the video at this point where I could just straight up say it, but sprinting absolutely fucks. I mean this. Sprinting is so fantastic. I'll go ahead and give you a quick tip right now in case you've been playing with sprinting and you haven't been enjoying it. Sprinting requires you to finish off a dodge and then continue to hold the dodge button. At that point, you'll start sprinting, and you'll notice that your turn speed is very low, even if you go all the way around, and hitting any obstacle feels very bad. Not only that, you can be tripped up by enemies, you can get put into some very compromising scenarios. But in addition to all this, you can actually dodge while you are sprinting. And since the requirements for starting a sprint is holding down the dodge button after dodging, you can actually immediately change the direction that you're going, as well as get the survivability of a dodge roll in the first place, and actually use this to completely re-navigate your way through the world, as opposed to ever stopping. Now, stopping a sprint also comes along with a little bit of a slow floating lag time, but what I've noticed is that stopping a dodge roll does not. So if you're ever trying to stop, you don't want to just let go of the sprint and experience this weird little dash stop, but instead just roll to your point and now you're completely stopped. If you have those tips in hand, which I'll probably make like a small little TikTok about and put it up in short form media so that people can get this without watching this video, sprinting is a life-changing addition to this game, which is very funny because keep that in mind when we get to the bad parts of it. But being able to just sprint through content that I know I don't care about and would rather just get to the end game as fast as possible feels like an amount of player agency that up until this point, Jonathan and the team have been unwilling to give the players because of this vision that they have of how they would enjoy the game. And this feels like the first really big head nod, acquiescence. Hey, we hear what you're saying, and we also want you to be able to enjoy this game. So if you want to do this, you can. It feels phenomenal. Alrighty, at this point, I feel like I've given the game its roses. They really have done an amazing job bringing a lot to this game that I personally would have required to be able to enjoy it to its fullest and to be able to stay on with the game. Because outside of making content for it, which obviously is a money driver for me, I have not necessarily enjoyed my time with the game more often than disliking the game. I have had to force my way through it often, and that is what ultimately causes me to bounce off of anything. If I can't find something to enjoy about a thing, I can't force myself to play it. I've been giving it its opportunities to change that outlook for me, and it has. That being said, there's still a lot that could be done here. So let's talk about the campaign and the fact that it is still way too long. And I mean that. It is insane how much content they expect you to either very slowly kill your way through or just sprint through to get to the next map. It took me 24 hours. And yes, I understand. If I was literally a giga chat at this game, I could probably be finishing these acts in like 4 to 6 hours. I understand that. I know that this is in part a player skill issue. The issue here though being that as far as what Jonathan has communicated in interviews, they don't believe that how long the maps are and how long the content is the problem. It's merely that there aren't enough interesting things to do inside of the content. The irony there being that if there were more interesting things to do in the campaign, it would take longer to do those things. My issue is, it shouldn't take me a full day's worth of playing to finish the tutorial. Now, not everybody sees the campaign of these games as a tutorial. I think that experiencing them for the first time is amazing. It's tutorialization of the game, but as well as granting you the story and allowing you to be immersed is wonderful. I love playing the campaign. I was a Diablo 2 speedrunner. All I did was play the campaign nonstop, day in, day out, hours at a time. I have no issue with doing the campaign of a game. My issue, though, is that player skill and player knowledge can only take you so far, and quite literally only doing the required beats to be able to get permanent buffs as well as push through to get to the end game, taking more than 6 hours per character that you want to play in a season is insane. I'm sorry, guys. If you personally like it, let me know down in the comments. You can bash me, you can tell me that I'm just wrong, but 24 hours does not seem like a bad amount of time for somebody like me at my casual level to be completing these acts and these interludes. I was talking with my chat, and people with fully twinked out characters were now completing it again in like 10 to 14 hours. And the idea of spending 10 to 14 hours every season just to play your second character to get to the thing that you actually want to do, which is the end game of PoE, which I don't think anybody can ever make the argument that the end game of PoE is not the vast majority of time that players spend in playing a season. It is just insane to me. It's way too long. It doesn't need to be this long. Literally cut all of the maps in half in size. It doesn't need to be Diablo 4 short. It does not. It doesn't need to be Diablo 2 short, where I can beat it in under 2 hours. But it can't be a full day's worth of gameplay for each character that I want to make, especially if I'm not playing a strong character. This build that I'm playing, I basically never died. I one-tapped every single boss that I fought, or one-shot every single boss that I fought, where I literally didn't have to dodge their mechanics. I just stood in place and let my minions just kill them in a matter of seconds. My minions were doing huge amounts of AoE damage, just clearing screens. It took me 24 hours. And that's while sprinting past the vast majority of enemies. That's insane. There's no other way for me to paint it. As much as I want to give the roses to Act 4, I will say that after the third time of going to a map due to a quest marker, just to find out that that map is blocked and I'll have to find a MacGuffin to be able to get past the block, and then after getting past that, I will then experience a huge map full of very tight tunnels that I then have to move through to get to the secondary MacGuffin before I can go fight the boss, and this happening in Act 1 and in Act 2 and in Act 3 and in Act 4 wasn't nearly as immersive the fourth time over. I think that the story is very interesting. I think it gets way too horny for some reason. This game's like wicked horny, and I don't get it. I'll be honest with you, it kind of creeps me out. But having to do basically the same set of things each act without it feeling new or different, or the reasoning for it not being different, I do think needs to be pointed out if you're going to make me do 24 hours of this campaign every season start for every character that I want to do. So maybe in re-envisioning the first 3 acts, we can get past some of that. I don't think that we're going to. I'm just not sure why these exact same storylines and plot devices are used again and again and again, as if we didn't just experience it. It feels a little bit like they're trying to do the same magic trick. And it really irks me. This plays into everything that I just said. Maps are just too large. While getting ready to get into Act 4, I did ask the question, is this map going to be just as big as Act 3? And my chat started laughing at me, telling me that I should really buckle in, because the map somehow got longer with more things in them. And while it is cool that there are like a bunch of secrets and cool things to find it, which is good, that is good, there were still just me sprinting through nameless number of hallways while just running around the border of the map, hoping to find the next exit as soon as possible. And also hoping that I ran across the content that I needed to do before having to cut through the middle. And that was every single map that I went into. And it really seems like they haven't learned anything from the constant criticisms that Act 2 and 3 have received since this game released. And they're not applying it to the future acts, which leaves me concerned that Act 5 and Act 6 are only going to get longer, larger, and more arduous to get through. Hopefully, that is not the case. This one's a little bit interesting because I think this does come down to taste, but I feel like how fluid your character feels is tied way too strongly to how much movement speed is on your boots, and the luck of the draw of getting more movement speed on your boots is something that you have very little control over as the player. Yes, you could be vendoring. Yes, you could be gambling. Yes, you could be slamming every single pair of boots that you find. You could pick up every single white pair of boots that you find and transmute and augment just to see if you hit them, to be as effective as possible, or at least as cost efficient as possible. And I only just now at like level 60, whatever I am, finally got 25% movement speed on my boots. While sprinting has helped a lot, your ability to move through combat, especially with sprinting, having that weird little like slide dash at the end, makes it difficult to do mechanics in the game. I've always had this issue both with shield charge as well as with blink, and the idea of turning off or turning on stop movement to cast a skill negatively impacts the majority of how the skills are meant to be used. So it really feels like there's no good middle ground here, and all of it is tied to how fast your boots are. And I really wish there was just an alternative, either boots having an implicit for movement speed, which I know a lot of people have very strong opinions about that. I think you're all just wrong. I think that boots should just have implicit movement speed, and it should get higher the higher item power that your boot is. That would come along with one issue I find, which is that good stats on a lower pair of boots would always be outperformed by higher boots. That being said, this is also true in the real game when you start talking about optimal gear. So I think just giving players that experience earlier on may even teach them something. But the fluidity of a character shouldn't be this tied to a single affix on a single piece of gear, and is the only place where you can actually get it from. My next point here, I also believe, is really a player taste thing. But in this game, I've yet to feel rewarded for doing combos other than typical setup spells. So I typically play a minion build, and what does that really mean? On my build, I'm going to apply a curse. I may cast Pain Offering once I'm fighting a monster that would actually live long enough to get the benefit of it. I may be using some of the commands for some of my minions, and then I may be using something like Unearth. In the early game, playing on a witch, you're typically going to be using Essence Drain, Contagion, and Unearth. What I always find in the early game is that the monsters are either dead before I've gotten the Essence Drain off, or just casting the Contagion wasn't good enough, so I'd rather just belt them down with Essence Drain. And when I do finally get the Unearth on the Contagioned corpse that had an Essence Drain on it and then it spreads, the monsters die immediately. And what that basically means is that the combat isn't long enough, and then I would have to re-unearth, but by re-unearthing I've just wasted time because I could have just moved on to the next pack. Basically, combos have always felt like either the pack dies too fast, or the monster is so tanky where I can do the entire combo. And if that is the case, moving into something like a boss fight, I somehow either do or do not do the combo again. In this current example, Unearth no longer really works on bosses because they don't typically spawn monsters that leave corpses, so I'm just doing the Contagion and the Essence Drain and my minions are just attacking. I actually find that with the current minions that I'm using, which are the Cocaine Ants, I don't have enough buttons to press where they kind of just go do everything and all I really need to do is curse. So it feels very uninteractive at that point, but it's just strictly stronger than me playing the piano version of this build, which would be command snipers with flame wall, keeping up my minus elemental resistances curse, be able to keep up my raging spirits. And doing all of that is much more engaging and doesn't necessarily feel like a combo. It feels just like different skills I use to do different things, more like a utility belt, which I like a lot. but it's just weaker than this more automated version of this build. But on this build, even putting the combo in isn't actually very useful, again, against a boss. All of this is to say, this weird ramble is to say, combos don't feel good, and I don't believe that they're going to successfully make them feel good. Because for a combo to feel good, monsters need to live long enough. And if monsters are living long enough for you to be able to use your combo all of the time, your build's probably bad. Because the majority of monsters shouldn't require a combo to be able to kill. They should just get blown away by your primary damage dealing skill, maybe with 1 or 2 setup or support skills put in there to be able to make you more efficient. All of that is to say, ARPGs, I have felt like, can never be slow enough for combos to feel good, unless you're playing something like No Rest for the Wicked, which I think feels bad to play. So again, this is a personal taste thing, but I feel like more often than not, the popular builds that you're seeing and the strong builds that you're seeing aren't really combo builds. They're either just hit every single skill on your piano whenever you can, no matter what, and it's just kind of mindlessly destructive, or it's a 1 or 2 button build because putting anything else on there would be a loss of action efficiency. And there, I don't think you can really get to a happy middle ground here. My next point is something that I don't typically complain about, but it has just been exceptionally bad playing in this season. The game feels less optimized, but it's not even just across the typical things where you would imagine. Like playing with Veilguard, if you never played with Spectres, these things melt your screen. Luckily, my rig is strong enough, and I have good enough internet to be able to stream this type of content. It still looks like an absolute mess on the screen, but I'm not dropping frames, it's not lagging, it's not freezing on me, and I'm not crashing. This season though, even without these super like high resource intensive builds, like using Veilguards, I have crashed more often than I ever have before, just straight to desktop crashing. While going into hub areas like King's March, the game is stuttering, it is freezing, it is taking multiple seconds for it to decide whether or not I can put things into my inventory, or if I bought something, or if I disenchanted something. It has gotten very bad. There's a really cool little farming route that you can do inside of Act 4, which I think would actually be great for new players to be able to get decently powerful gear. You know how they added in the Monkey King to this game? He's right next to the entrance from the next map over, so you can run straight down to him. You would go to town, salvage your stuff, reset his map, waypoint back up, and then run down. It would be super fast. It takes you about 5 to 10 seconds to kill him. And it took me 20 seconds to do all of the loading of going to town through my portal, resetting the instance, going through the waypoint, going through the loading zone, and then going back to fight him. 66% of the time of a farming strategy just being loading screens is like original Diablo 2 levels of unoptimized. It's really bad. Now, obviously, adding a bunch of new things to the game is going to come along with a loss of optimization, and then they will re-optimize. But if you're experiencing this yourself, you are not crazy. It's probably not your rig's fault. The game is just gotten worse at stabilizing itself. The Kiss curse of the new support gem system is that it teaches you that getting higher tier supports is better until it isn't. And it's in ways that I don't necessarily understand why they took this route, and I have like one really good example of this. Rapid attacks, which used to be martial tempo, I believe. I also don't know why the names were changed. But rapid attacks gave you 15% attack speed as a tier 1 support. As a tier 2 support, it's going to give you 25% increased attack speed. And then as a tier 3 support, it's going to give you 35% attack speed, but your skill is going to deal 50% less damage. Now, let me just stop right here and recognize this is actually very, very interesting. There are a lot of skills that you would love to do faster and you actually don't care about the damage of it, you just care about the effect. So I actually understand the idea of this Kiss curse. You can just stop at rapid attacks at 25%, which is a huge amount, and just be good with that. Because if you care about the damage that the skill is doing, you would never want this downside. But if instead you are that previous example I just said, then you can get even more out of it by effectively not having a downside at all. It helps to differentiate these gems' identity for being able to support multiple different playstyles, multiple different skill sets, and maybe enabling things down the line that aren't currently in the game but might come up later. That is very good. This is an amazing system. It is very, very good development. The issue being that you learn that Rapid Attacks 1 is good, Rapid Attacks 2 is gooder, so you assume Rapid Attacks 3 is going to be goodest, and then it turns out for the vast majority of your builds, you're not going to want to use this. My issue with that being that from a casual player's perspective, you may look at this and go, oh, I guess that 10% increased attack speed is worth 50% damage. This must be worth it for me, and just never really think past that. So either I would like to see the tier 5 support gems in general having a downside, while the increasing level tiered gems not experiencing this, so that building into tier 5 is where you start to ask the question of, okay, is it worth it for me to use this gem? As opposed to, oh no, the gem I was using is somehow worse now. And then the last thing here, and I think everybody can kind of agree on this one, it just sucks that I have to go to like 5 different menu UIs in town just to be able to process the loot that I had, when 9 times out of 10, all I'm going to be doing is putting currency into my stash. I don't understand why I have to go to Doriani to very quickly identify everything, and then head over to whoever the smith is to be able to salvage the rare items that I have. Then I might find out that some of the base items or the magic items that I have are worth regal orbing, and then be able to go back to the blacksmith to then be able to disenchant them, to be able to break them back down into shards, and then run over to the salvage bench to be able to break down superior as well as socketed gear. And then maybe because one of the magic items I found might be useful, heading over to my stash to be able to use the currency. And then turns out that popping that thing into her means I have to go salvage again. And then I get to walk back into my portal. It is just an insane amount of steps. But what if the blacksmith in the end game just had one of each one of the buttons? Its bases are either buying and selling or disenchanting stuff. And then you can click salvage, and then you can choose from there. I feel like it would just make it strictly better. I'm not exactly sure why we even need to go talk to multiple things to be able to do this in the first place, because we're talking about a world where an ancient Central American blood ritualist rides around in a Dr. Robotnik robot, and then he uses a Wakandan energy shield to stop the fallout from a cataclysm, and the cataclysm is madness spreading through people like eldritch horrors, and on top of all that, I'm just a big guy swinging around a mace. I don't think it's an aesthetic issue. I just think for whatever reason, y'all like us to click as much stuff as possible. So there you have it. There's my feedback. That's my experience playing through the campaign, completing a character in this regard. I'm now going to be jumping into the end game. I'm going to start mapping. I'm going to feel it out. I'm going to try the pinnacle content. I'm going to see how building into different parts of the Atlas map is going to make it feel better or worse. I'm going to give it my best shot to be able to enjoy the actual map itself, as well as the towers and juicing things and all of that. I don't think that that's still going to be there for me. As far as I understand it, they are aware that it's still not good enough. They are going to be working on it. This is an early access game. I'm not expecting perfection, but I am going to go experience that. If I find like I have good enough feedback to warrant another video, I'll be putting that one out as well. I'm also, now that I've completed this, I'm going to be covering my leveling guide for this same build, as well as transitioning into the end game. You can already find what I assume is just like a strictly higher quality guide over on maxroll.gg, but I like to think that I explain things in a pretty cool way, and a lot of people seem to resonate with the approach that I have for the game. So if you've been waiting on that, thank you so much for your patience. I do apologize. It's just, you know, owning a house, it's hard. But that's enough of me yapping. Thank you so much for watching this video. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. I cover every ARPG that I play, most notably Diablo and now Path of Exile 2. Leave a like on the video and also comment down below if you wouldn't mind. I would deeply appreciate it. Let me know what your experience has been. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, ideas, different strategies, weird bugs you haven't seen anybody cover, I'd love to hear from you. Thank you so much for watching this video. I truly, truly hope that it helps. I look forward to seeing you in the next one.